Hi, I'm Brian with Hanning Law Limited. I am an attorney. I work with small businesses of all sorts, including creative businesses. And one of the things I work a lot with these businesses is how to pick and choose what legal entity they should be. And I'm going to start with a disclaimer, which is it's going to depend on your situation. The general advice is going to be what I give here, but depending on what your specific goals, needs, and targets are, it may make sense to enter into a different type of business structure. Now, before I, jump too deep into it, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and they're another lawyer. They've got this type of practice area that they're well knowledge about, but it's not really something they want to do. And we were talking about a book that they were looking at writing. And I went, tell me about this. How's it going? And he's like, I'm thinking about putting it on my website. It's not something I want to practice in, but it's something that I want out there. And I looked at him and I went, look, as a professional, when we write books, it is marketing material. And if what we're marketing isn't something we're doing, it's a conflict of goals and actions. And so look at creating a different company, putting the book there and selling it there just so that it's out there and it's separate from you. The thing that is true going from this professional to going to you as a creative business is the same thing of we separate out what we do so that when we're selling and marketing these different ideas, it makes sense and it's a smooth process. He kind of knew what I was talking about, but I want to start here, which is what is a legal entity? What's a business structure from a legal point of view? Now, when you're talking about it as a more practical level, you're talking about it as in hierarchies and flowcharts of authority, and we don't care about that from a legal standpoint. That really makes sense mostly for and in bigger businesses. But what a legal entity is and what a legal structure is it's a filing with your Secretary of State. For all of you, hopefully you're in Northern Colorado, so it's going to be the Colorado Secretary of State. It's a filing that says, hey, I've created this company and I'm doing work. They don't ask what kind of work, they don't really care any of it, but it creates this legal fictional person that can stand out there and do any legal business. Using that business, we then go to revenue, the IRS, any other appropriate agency that we need to in order to get tax licenses, bank accounts, whatever. And it's all in and held by your new company. We want it in that new company because it's not us, right? And that becomes important when you think about liability. If there is something that's going to go wrong, what's going to go wrong is somebody's going to feel injured, harmed, or otherwise mad at what you're doing. Let's take an example outside of the legal sphere. You are creating a painting, and you're creating the painting for a client. It's a commission work. And your client doesn't want to pay you. Now, it's not you individually that's on the hook for any losses, it's your business. And your business then has the right to pursue that commission client and try to recover that money. Or let's say you've been hired to pursue a photographing aspect, and you're taking your photos downtown and it happens to catch somebody's logo. If that company decides to sue you or to sue your client for using that logo, it wouldn't be you individually, it would be stopped by your entity. So we're really trying to understand what are those edge cases for your profession, when and how might things go wrong, and then looking at those things and going, you know what? It's best if I personally am not on the hook for that. We create that legal fiction, that legal company, to act as the intermediary for those situations. A lot of people think that sole proprietors and partnerships are legal entities. And they do share the characteristic of having a filing with the Secretary of State and holding out as a business. The filing with the Secretary of State is usage of trade name. And what it does is it says that I, Brian, am holding myself out as a business, and my business name is Brian's Art Expo. That creates no protection for me. Or if I'm working with another friend of mine, Jackie, and Jackie and I enter into a sculpting business and we're selling sculptures and the sculpture falls on somebody and we're just a partnership with the trade name, they can sue this partnership and be at me and Jackie personally and not something in between. Meaning it's not good. You want to have some kind of protection if there is any real liability that could exist. Because of that, we're really looking at entering into an LLC. Again, I will say that there are many types of companies that provide liability shields, and that depending on your personal goals and what kind of business you're pursuing, different types of entities may make more sense. For most of us, having an LLC, which is flexible enough to allow us to do what we need to do, while at the same time providing liability protection, it means that we can avoid any of the situations where terrible things could happen to us personally. If something bad happens, it gets stopped by the business. An LLC is also known as a limited liability corporation, and it is based around the idea that the owners enter into a contract in order to set up the company and still have protection from third parties. The contract that we're looking at is called an operating agreement. That operating agreement is an agreement between all of the members of the company. If it's just you and the company, it's between you and the company. If it's you, your friend, and their friend, it's between the three of you. And as a contract, it can cover a lot of things. Roles. Who has the ability to sign legally binding agreements on behalf of the company? You can agree to responsibilities. This person is to talk with the bank and is our bank signatory. This person is assigned to deal with the IRS, and they can hire an accountant, but it's through them. All of those kinds of things are created and allowed in these situations. We can also look at putting in place plans for what I call eventualities. It's the bad things that go on that aren't from a third party. How do we plan for dealing with ownership in those situations? And so we have the ability to understand, implement, and start a plan because we all like each other at the beginning. And so for situations where things could go wrong in the future, having some kind of plan in place can help. On the whole, what we're talking about with an entity is that we live in a society where people sue each other over different situations. And as creators, you don't want to have that on you personally. And so having some kind of separation, specifically an LLC or some other type of company registered with your Secretary of State, means that you've done most of the steps already to make sure that you personally don't have that liability. Putting together the operating agreement increases that liability protection. Having a separate bank account increases that liability protection. And everything that you can do to reinforce that the person doing the selling of what you're is a different person than you individually reduces your personal liability. I understand and have had this conversation with artists that, oh, I just take photos. I don't really have any liability. And the thing is you may be right. You may go through your entire career and have zero problems. But the more that you do it, the more likely you are to run into an issue. And whether that issue is as simple as non-payment or it's as complicated as non-payment, having that legal entity in place to absorb and to deal with those situations, it can be a great benefit for you. Now, I don't want it to sound like you will 100% run into problems. When I talk to potential clients, what I tell them is this: we can't predict the future. We just have to deal with the idea that we're out there trying things. And sometimes when we try things, it works fabulously well. Other times, it falls apart on us. When it falls apart on us, sometimes that is fine. Other times, it is a bigger issue. And I recommend having some kind of entity, because if things fall apart and it falls apart through the entity, we can restart. We can try again. We can pivot the company. And again, that's not trying to say that it will happen to you, but we want to isolate the potential problems as much as possible while giving us a platform to succeed. And having plans in place for how do we add people, how do we deal with the bank, how do we do taxes, how do we X, Y, and Z. It means that at the end of the day, we are more likely to have success than not. But putting in place that plan, putting in place that entity to protect yourself, it's a good start. And we're going out and doing business, be it creative or otherwise. Having a good start is going to be an important, helpful piece. I hope you enjoyed the rest of this series put on by the Larimer Small Business Development Center, and I'll talk to you all later.